If you own a gun in America, the November court ruling that expanded your rights also created legal landmines that could destroy you. Everyone's celebrating the new freedoms, but almost nobody is talking about the dangerous flip side. These same 10 changes that handed you power also set strict boundaries that will crush anyone who crosses them. One wrong move under these new rules could cost you your freedom, your firearms, and your future. Hit subscribe right now because what you don't know about these changes is far more dangerous than what you do. Here are the 10 traps every gun owner must avoid immediately. Law 1. Heightened judicial review consequences. Law 1. Heightened judicial review consequences. This first change sounds like pure victory for gun owners, but it comes with a hidden danger that's already sending people to prison. Yes, strict scrutiny means the government has to prove gun laws are necessary. But here's what nobody's telling you. When a law does pass strict scrutiny, violations now carry massively increased penalties because courts consider these truly compelling restrictions. A man in Colorado violated a magazine capacity limit that barely passed legal review, 6 months probation. Now, that same law has to meet strict scrutiny standards. If it survives that test, the court views it as absolutely critical to public safety. That same violation now carries a mandatory minimum of 2 years in federal prison. The stricter the test the law passes, the harsher the punishment for breaking it. Courts are saying if a restriction is important enough to survive strict scrutiny, then violating it is serious enough for maximum penalties. Law 2, conditional immunity. Law 2, conditional immunity limitations. You're immune from lawsuits when you use your gun in lawful self-defense, but that protection evaporates instantly if your actions cross the line even slightly and the line just got razor thin. The immunity only applies to lawful self-defense. If prosecutors can show that any element of your defensive action was questionable, you lose all protection and face both criminal and civil destruction. A man in Arizona shot an intruder who was breaking into his garage, clear self-defense, but the man fired a warning shot first, then a second shot that hit the intruder. That warning shot violated Arizona law because one element of his defense was illegal. He lost all immunity. He's now facing a $2 million civil lawsuit and criminal charges. A woman in Tennessee shot an attacker in her driveway. Justified shooting, but her permit had expired 3 weeks earlier. One administrative violation stripped away all her self-defense immunity. She lost her house, her savings, and got 18 months in prison. The immunity is all or nothing. One mistake, and you're completely exposed. Law 3, officer liability. Law 3, officer liability. Defensive enforcement. Police officers now face personal liability for violating your gun rights. That sounds great until you realize what happens when officers become terrified of making mistakes. When officers know they can be sued personally, they're documenting everything and arresting anyone in questionable situations. An officer in Michigan pulled over a car for speeding. The driver disclosed he had a firearm in the center console. The officer asked if the driver had a permit. The driver said yes, but couldn't find the physical card. He had a photo on his phone. Under the new accountability standard, that officer detained the driver, impounded the car, seized the firearm, and held everything for 48 hours until the permit could be physically verified. Why? Because if he made the wrong call and released an improperly armed person, he could face personal liability. Better safe than sorry from their perspective. Officers are now making more arrests, more confiscations, and more defensive decisions because they're protecting themselves from lawsuits. You might beat the charges later, but you're spending a night in jail and thousands on legal fees. Law 4, validated zone enhanced. Law 4, validated zone enhanced penalties. Penalties, the list of places where guns are banned just got slashed by 80%, which means you can carry in far more locations. But here's the trap. For the places that still qualify as legitimately sensitive, violations now trigger federal charges with mandatory minimums. Before this ruling, walking into a restricted area with a gun might get your weapon confiscated and a misdemeanor charge. A guy in New York accidentally carried his licensed pistol into a government building, weapon confiscated, $500 fine, case dismissed. Now that the sensitive place list is narrowed and validated by strict scrutiny, courts view the remaining locations as truly critical security zones. That same violation today results in federal criminal charges with a mandatory minimum sentence of 1 year in prison and permanent loss of gun rights. A woman in California didn't realize a public park next to a school fell within the 1,000-foot gun-free school zone. She was legally carrying with a permit. 1 hour in that park cost her 5 years in federal prison because the restricted zone passed the strict scrutiny test. Schools, carouses, and government buildings with security screening are now treated as critical infrastructure. Law 5, Accelerated Denial Protocol. Law 5, Accelerated Denial Protocol. States must now approve or deny your carry permit within 60 days, or it's automatically granted. That sounds perfect until you realize what happens when you make even one small error on your application. States are now rejecting applications instantly for any mistake because they cannot afford to let the 60-day clock run out. They're treating every application like a legal document where errors equal automatic denial. A man in New Jersey transposed 2 numbers in his Social Security number on his permit application. Instant denial. No chance to correct it. He had to resubmit an entirely new application and start the 60-day clock over. A woman in Massachusetts forgot to check one box on page 4 of her application. The state denied it on day 3 and sent a letter saying she could resubmit a corrected application. By the time she received the letter, another week had passed. Total time lost, 2 months. States are using this as a weapon. They deny applications for trivial errors early in the 60-day window, forcing you to restart the entire process. Law 6, Outcome-Based Law 6, Outcome-Based Negligence Standard, Negligence Standard. You can now store your ammunition however you want. No more separate locked containers, no more different rooms. But here's the deadly trap that's catching people. Because these mandates are gone, you now have zero excuse if something goes wrong. If your loaded firearm is used by someone who shouldn't have access to it, you face federal charges for negligent storage with mandatory prison time. A teenager in Connecticut got access to his father's gun and accidentally shot himself. Tragic. The father had followed the state's storage requirements by keeping the gun locked in one room and the ammunition locked in another room. No charges were filed against the father. Now those mandates are gone. A similar incident happened in Ohio last month. The father stored his loaded gun in his nightstand because he's legally allowed to. His teenage son found it and injured himself. The father is now facing federal charges for negligent storage with a mandatory minimum sentence of 3 years because prosecutors argued he didn't take reasonable precautions. With no state mandate to follow, courts are now judging your storage choices based on outcomes. Law 7, Real-Time Transaction Monitoring. Law 7, Real-Time Transaction Monitoring. State-level gun registries are being destroyed. California, Hawaii, and others must delete millions of records linking you to your firearms. Sounds like pure victory. But there's a sinister replacement system already rolling out because states cannot maintain registries. They're now requiring real-time reporting of every single purchase. Before, a state might collect data and build a database over time. Now, that's illegal. So they're forcing dealers to report every transaction to law enforcement immediately, and those reports are checked within hours. You buy a gun in Nevada, the dealer must now electronically report the transaction to local police, the sheriff's office, and state police within 24 hours, not for registry purposes, for immediate active investigation. If your name generates any hit whatsoever in any law enforcement system, detectives show up at your door within 48 hours. A man in Washington state bought a rifle on Monday. On Wednesday, 2 detectives appeared at his home. They wanted to see the gun, verify the serial number, confirm it was properly stored, and ask why he bought it. He had an old DUI from Law 8, criminal prosecution escalation 6 years ago. Law 8, criminal prosecution escalation. The ATF can no longer revoke your license for minor paperwork mistakes. They have to prove criminal violations. That protection is real, but there's a dark side. Nobody's talking about because the ATF lost their easy enforcement tool. They're now pursuing criminal charges for everything. Before, the ATF would find a paperwork error and revoke your license, bad but not criminal. You could appeal, maybe get the license back, or apply for a new one. A gun dealer in Texas had his license revoked for record-keeping errors. He filed an appeal, corrected the issues, and got his license reinstated 6 months later. Now, the ATF cannot use administrative penalties as their primary weapon, so they're treating every violation as criminal from day one. That same Texas dealer made a similar mistake last month. This time, instead of license revocation, he got charged with federal firearms trafficking. He's facing 15 years in prison. The ATF's new approach is simple. If we can't take your license for small mistakes, we'll put you in prison for them instead. Law 9, non-reciprocal state felony trap, non-rescreen.